All right, let's go to this conversation now. Reports suggest that magistrates are threatening to protest over a pay gap between them and judges. Now, the Judicial Officers Association of South Africa also wants Parliament to look at this issue as well. These issues, of course, don't only revolve around remuneration. There are also some concerns about the workload. Let's get more details now. Neelan Karikan, Judicial Officers Association of South Africa, is joining us live now, and he's the president there. Neelan, thank you so much for your time this evening. So, are these reports true that there are some possible threats of strike action, and also how big of a pay gap are we talking about here?
Thank you so much for the platform, and good evening to your viewers. On the aspect of the pay gap, remember, we are not as an organization or as the lower court judiciary actually wanting to have the same salary as judges. The important aspect that we are trying to highlight is that there is a vast difference, and there's various anomalies as to how magistrates are remunerated insofar as it concerns the judiciary as a whole. Now, we've had the remuneration, or the Independent Remuneration Committee, that has been doing research. They've conducted reports, and finally, those reports don't get implemented. That is largely the gripe we are having. They have already finalized aspects of major review in comparison to the Chief Justice being pegged as the anchor position of the judiciary. And we falling within the judiciary, it actually makes sense. And when you look at, as the pay progressions continue from the High Court, filtering down to the lowest level of judicial officer, which is our magistrates, that difference in gaps is it's already accepted, and research has already shown that it's unacceptably too large. In fact, the research that was conducted by the commission themselves pointed out that the magistrates, or the lowest paid magistrate, should be pegged at least at 50% of what a judge's remuneration would be. And then incrementally there would be a certain gap as each of the different levels are considered.
Yeah.
And this has always been accepted, but not implemented. It goes also... Yes.
Pardon me. And when you're asking as the association, what are they saying are the reasons for not implementing?
The association is largely holding the Independent Remuneration Committee to account. It is that committee that is responsible for overseeing and to make recommendations to the president of the country. And that committee, it seems that they are not able to fulfill their function. We have something called a cost of living adjustment that needs to be attended to each year. And for more than a decade, magistrates never receive the normal cost of living inflation adjustment. And when they do, it's always way below inflation. It has also happened that magistrates have received a 0% increment in terms of an adjustment. So those types of recommendations are made through the Independent Remuneration Committee, ultimately goes to the president of the country, and if he approves same, it ends up before Parliament. And what has happened is, progressively, magistrates have been left behind, whilst other public servants have grown exponentially.
So, pardon me, there's also something else that you raise, which is very important, and I don't want us not to touch on it. It's around the issue of what you're saying is a failure to take into account the changing role as well as status and the duties of magistrates. What are these changes in your status, your role as well?
Remember, in the lower court, in the regional magistrates court and in the district court, our jurisdiction has also increased almost exponentially. Magistrates in the regional court can now do divorces, which used to be in the purview of the High Court. And then if you look at the types of sentences magistrates can impose currently, imposition of sentence can even include, in certain cases, life imprisonment. And that's the maximum penal jurisdiction in the criminal court. And then you look at the National Credit Act, for which is applicable and is applied in the Magistrates Court also, just as in the High Court. When it comes to those types of aspects, the jurisdiction for monetary judgments that the magistrates actually grant, that jurisdiction is almost unlimited. And we also have equality courts. Remember, the equality court was created by virtue of a requirement in terms of equality and a clause in the Constitution. Now, the district magistrates courts, they have equality courts. The regional magistrates courts have equality courts, and the High Court has equality courts. So the type of work we are doing is substantial.
Yeah, and what happens now? Because some reports are suggesting that you're threatening to down tools, but if you really are, how then do you work around the fact that you provide an essential service and you may not be allowed to do this?
Absolutely. We are very mindful of us being essential service and not wanting to bring the judiciary into disrepute. In fact, as we stand now as an organization, this is a discussion that is happening in every province amongst the PECs and amongst our members. Because remember, we are all legally qualified people. We know exactly what our limitations are. And we're hoping that once we secure a legal opinion as to what we can do and what we cannot, then we will make a decision going forward. But right now, there is processes in place in terms of litigation. I know that our sister organization is already in the courts, in the High Court, dealing with the IRC. And I also know that I think the president has also been cited in respect of irrationality with the COLA amounts that are even being suggested. So that's one avenue.
So that litigation, pardon me, that litigation links with this particular matter or another one?
No, everything is intertwined and linked. There are so many different components to what we are actually trying to achieve. On and above wanting government and the minister to implement legislation to fast-track aspects of a single judiciary, because we still are falling within the Department of Justice. And we want to make sure that if we want a truly independent judiciary, our Chief Justice most definitely must take full control, administrative control, and control over all aspects of the judiciary, because the largest component of the judiciary is the magistracy. We are doing 95% of the work. And this discussion about potential strike action or even industrial action is just a discussion for now. There is no way that as an organization we will encourage the stopping of services or limiting access to our courts. The courts are our priority. Those are our bread and butter issues. Yeah. Our focus is on our judgments. But now we are obliged as an association to ensure that magistrates particularly no longer need to so-called be abused, because financially right now the magistracy is in a very dire position and they don't have any option but to raise these discussions. And these discussions actually has allowed us to develop some type of momentum. Yeah. I must add, we've had an earlier interview with Newsroom Africa today, and subsequent to that interview, the National Council of Provinces actually wrote to us acknowledging our letter to the National Assembly, wherein we've pointed out all the issues that we are having, and these are pertinent issues. These are issues that even the select committee has agreed that they are relevant, but the necessary role players need to do what they are mandated constitutionally to do. So if they do their job, ultimately there's no need for this type of engagement and strike action, industrial action. There's really no need for us to discuss that further.
All right. Thank you so much for giving us your thoughts and your inputs on this one. We've reached out to the Justice Department and they're going to be speaking to us tomorrow about this very issue so that we're able to get their sense and also their response to some of the issues that you are raising here. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That's Neelan Karikan, Judicial Officers Association of South Africa, and he's the president there. We'll take a short break and we've got more for you after this.